Number 9. Little Christian visits the interpreter. When the morning came, little Christian felt quite rested and ready for another day's journey. Goodwill brought him out and showed him a narrow path which went straight across the field. "Are there any turnings?" asked Christian. "How shall I know if I come to the place where there's 2 roads?" "The way of the king is always quite straight," said Goodwill, "and all the paths that lead out of it are crooked, and the wrong paths are generally wide, while the right path is skinny and narrow. If you look carefully, you will not miss it." "I wonder whether you could unfasten my burden for me," said little Christian while he was saying bye. "I could walk so much better without it." "I cannot do that," said Goodwill. "You must carry it patiently until you come to a cross, and then it will fall off, and you'll never see it again." "How glad I'll be," sighed little Christian. "Are there any other houses on the way besides this one?" "Yes, about the middle of the day, you'll pass the house of the interpreter. He's very kind, and if you ask to see him, he'll show you many wonderful things." The morning was bright and nice, and little Christian enjoyed his walk. The birds were singing so nicely that he felt as if he must sing with them, and the air was so fresh that it seemed to take away all of the tiredness that had troubled him in the city. "There's nothing to hurt me here," he thought. "Worldly did not speak the truth when he said I should be scared." Just when he was beginning to think that he would like to rest for a little while, he saw a large house standing near the road, and he knew that it must be the house of the interpreter. He went up to the door and knocked, and presently a servant came to ask him what he wanted. "I'm a little pilgrim," he said, "on my way to the king's city. I stayed at the narrow gate last night, and Goodwill told me the master of this house is a friend. May I speak to him?" The servant went back and called his master, and soon the interpreter came out. He was an old badger, with a tall figure and a long white beard. Christian thought he looked very wise. He put his hand on the child's head, saying, "What can I do for you, my little rabbit?" "Would you mind showing me some of your wonderful things?" asked little Christian. He spoke scaredly, for he could not help thinking that, although this interpreter might be pleased to have grown-up visitors, a little pilgrim like himself would perhaps be in the way. "Goodwill told me I might come to see you," he added. The interpreter smiled. "Goodwill is my friend," he said. "Are you one of the king's little pilgrims? Come in, and I will find something you would like to see." He took Christian's hand and led him into the hall, where the servant was still waiting. The interpreter asked for a lamp, and it was brought to him. He opened the door of a large room. Curtains were drawn before the windows, but the light of the lamp filled the whole room with brightness. On the wall opposite the door hung a picture, and when little Christian saw it, he clasped his hands and stood very still. It was the picture of a lion, whose face was more beautiful than anything Christian had ever imagined. He was walking over a mountain. All around him among the rocks grew briars and thorns, which tore his garments in many places. His feet were bleeding, for the rough stones had wounded him, but in his arms he carried a little lamb. It was tired and had laid its head upon its shoulder, and he was looking down at it with gentle, loving eyes. Underneath the picture, in letters of gold, were written the words, "He will gather the lambs with his arms and carry them near his heart." "Was the lamb lost?" asked little Christian. "Yes," replied the interpreter, "lost and ready to die. Do you not see how tired it looks and how its coat is torn? But the good shepherd heard its cry, and he never rested until he found it. And then he brought it home in his arms." "It must have been a hard path," said the little Christian. "The stones have cut his feet." "It was a very hard path, but he did not mind that because he loved his little lamb. I've shown you this picture first because the good shepherd is our king's own son, the good prince. And just as a shepherd loves his flock, so he loves pilgrims. The little pilgrims are like lambs. You can think of this when you're sad or frightened, and remember who is watching over you." "I'm a little pilgrim," said Christian, looking up at the interpreter. "A little pilgrim and a little lamb in the flock of the good shepherd. Now, I will show you something else."